The audacity to think that Farmageddon isn't even a top 50 rivalry in college football, let alone a top 10 rivalry in college football, is bizarre. For some reason, somebody decided to write those words and send it out to the mass media. This is Farmageddon Friday.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Boom! Hit me with that beat, Nick. It's a Locked On College Crossover, Farmageddon Friday. Christian Rao, Nick Maravitz, Locked On Kansas State, and Locked On Cyclones. Your team every day. Big 12 chatter with the best rivalry in the Big 12. If you've heard it here first, I hope you can hear it other places. We are going to tell you more about why this rivalry means a lot. And apparently, it's not a known commodity, but we're going to make sure you know about that on this episode, Nick. Lots to talk about on this show today. We're going to talk about some strength of schedules in the Big 12. And of course, we're going to talk about how Parity continues to strike again when it comes to this conference. But first, before we do so, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. 63rd. That's what I want to say on this. That's what somebody had the audacity to say, that Iowa State versus Kansas State, Farmageddon, ranks when it comes to all-time college rivalries. Insane. Nick, give a little more context to what I'm saying, because I'm pretty heated, and I just can't believe that somebody would put that on paper, digital paper, might I add, and think that is a right thing to hit publish on.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to take some deep breaths here. You mentioned the digital paper. That's kind of, it's like we're reaching the masses with this. Is that what we're doing? This is more so for the Locked On Cyclones fans here. If you're listening to KXNO, the kind of the sports radio in Iowa, this is Scott Docterman. I'm sure you've heard it if you're listening to KXNO. I'm pretty sure they've talked about this before. He ranked the top 100 rivalries in college football and completely whiffed on Farmageddon. I mean, we are talking about a full, off the tee box, miss the ball, spin around, it's wet ground, you're flying everywhere. It was an absolute whiff is the best word for it. And I will say, before we get into some of the rivalries, I think it's important to mention the principles that Scott Docterman was kind of going with here when he made these rankings. I'm going to fire through these as quickly as I can because there are 11 of them. He based the ranking on, one, the data. What do the numbers say? How many times have they met as ranked opponents? What the win-loss disparity is. The prominence of this rivalry is a high-profile power conference programs. The relevance, does it matter to their conference or college football as a whole? The trajectory, is the series growing or retracting? Are they even on playing level or on even playing levels? Is this an annual series? The frequency of it. The proximity, are the teams in-state or border rivals? Competitiveness, is the series ebbing and flowing, or is it kind of like one team is significantly better all the time? The moments from the games, are there games or plays that stand out decades later? Snow again. The intensity of the series, is this a series that both fan bases circle when the schedule comes out? Then the last two here, the longevity, how long have these teams played each other? And the history, are they longtime members of the same conference? Things of that nature. Now, when I read those 11 criteria, Christian, I saw you reacting, and I'm sure every single person listening to this, I know you specifically, were reacting in the way of, wait, it's checking every single box. Christian, what's your take on? He must have used different criteria for this rivalry, no?
Yeah, unless he was one to tell the Big 12 that maybe in a few years you should not make this a protected rivalry. Maybe he was in favor for that. But the biggest one that gets me is, like, how long has this rivalry has been going on? Since 1917. 1917. It was during World War I, right after World War I, when this first meeting started. We're talking about the 109th time that these two teams are going to be facing off in a few weeks in Dublin. And you name all these credentials, these criterias, and you think, you know what? None of these work for me. Let me put them down in the 60s. What must have happened? He must have put this in an Excel sheet. This is the only thing that could happen here. He had an Excel sheet, and he must have put a wrong formula in. He must have not took an account to 6 of those 11 criterias when only looking at this rivalry and put it down to the 60s. We had this conversation off the air, Nick. you can put people in front of them. I'm not saying that Farmageddon is the best rivalry in college football. I think it's one of the best. Don't get me wrong. I think it's the best in the Big 12, but I think there are a few others that have a lot more weight, and for good reason. But if this rivalry is not in the top 10 on your list, then it's not a list that I'm willing to look at because it has no weight or validity, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I love how I'm looking at like the pictures that this the Athletic released this, and so they put this nice little graphic together of all the games, and it's like, don't recognize that picture, don't recognize that picture, don't recognize that picture. That's Snowmageddon. Like the everything that he talked about, every criteria, this rivalry has it. Now, if you're going to rank a rivalry based on who has the coolest colors, that's like completely subjective, and it's hard to really pin it down. If you're a big fan of orange and purple, you might say Syracuse TCU, and I can't really argue with that. But when you lay out the criteria as this numbers game, and it's 54 to 50 to 4, all time, one of the oldest rivalries ever, like just to name a few points, I'm not going to go through them all because it would just be like a massive waste of time. Like, how is this in the 60s? When I first saw this, I also was looking for Iowa State. That was way too low. Kansas State, way too low. I wonder if this is just a shot towards the Big 12. Is that like a problem that we're having with the conference? Because I know that the conference as a whole doesn't get enough respect. I don't know what it could be. This coming from Scott Docterman of all people too absolutely shocked me. And we were talking about this off the air too. I think that this is like disrespect on the first game of this season, because this game in Iowa State and Iowa State and Kansas State, excuse me, is going to be arguably the biggest game to start a college football season ever. Enormous rivalry game, enormous complications in the Big 12, over in Dublin, games like it checks all the boxes. And Scott, and I'm sure some other people that read this and were like, yeah, that makes sense. We're like, yeah, this is not an important game. And I think a lot of people are going to let this game go by the wayside when they're turning on their TVs in week 0. They're like, oh, I guess Iowa State, Kansas State are playing. Well, this is a bummer. I'm not even going to watch it. This is going to be one of the best games of the season.
People are going to be glued to it. Week 0, it's the biggest rivalry of the week. I mean, even if this was a week 1 game, even if this game was on rivalry week, this is a game you pay attention to. But the fact that it is basically a standalone rivalry game, week 0, where there's a couple Mountain West teams that play later on in the day, like this is the game of the day, the game of the week. And if it was probably on home turf, you would have saw College Game Day there as well. There's just a lot of things to show why this is a good rivalry, and it's just completely disrespected. And we had to make sure we talked about it, because I don't think it would be a Farmageddon Friday if we didn't discuss this this bizarre topic, egregious results of putting it on there. And you talk about the disrespect to the Big 12. I don't know if you still have it up, but where do they put the Holy War? Because that's probably the other rivalry inside the Big 12 now that Oklahoma and Texas are gone, that probably you can talk about as being one of the tops in the conference. I still think that, now don't get me wrong, I like the Holy War, but I do think that because of the history, because of the longevity of Farmageddon, it tops it. But where do they have the Holy War? I'm going to guess it's higher than 63.
It is higher than 63, and I was just doing a quick browse of the top teams because I was curious where the top Big 12 teams came in, and just based on like the fastest proofreading of my entire life, the highest one is Kansas, Missouri at 19. Then you find the Holy War at 28, Utah, BYU. Yes, it's a good rivalry, but I feel like that's around the range that Iowa State, Kansas State should have been, maybe higher, maybe lower. I can see, and I know what you're saying about the top 10 too. Like that makes sense, and I agree with that. But like from somebody else writing it, I wouldn't be too shocked if this came in at like 27.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Agreed.
But
if this article came out and this Farmageddon was in the top 30, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think it would still have been seen as disrespect, but not enough to sit and talk for 10 to 12 minutes. No way in shape and form. For the record, I know this is probably not the best thing to hear from my viewers, but Kansas, Missouri, those two schools hate each other. And that's not talked about enough. So I'm actually not against that being towards the top. That is actually a really fun rivalry to pay attention to, Mizzou and KU. But Farmageddon right here, I still would put these two schools higher. Kansas and Mizzou don't play each other every year. BYU and Utah don't play each other every year. Although when they do, it's electric. But Iowa State and Kansas State play every single year. His criteria, the one that wrote this article, and still put it in the 60s, Nick.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I'm not taking anything away from Kansas, Missouri. I'm just simply pointing out the fact that the highest rated Big 12 team in any rivalry it's not in the top 18. I almost said the top 20. They are technically in the top 20. So I guess that's worth like mentioning. But yeah, I just thought, and I agree with you. Top 30, we're probably not talking about this. There is a little disrespect, but it's like, it's the Big 12 for you. I'm not too shocked. You put them at 63, we're going to talk about it. It's unacceptable, I think, is maybe the only word for it.
Where would you put this rivalry when you are ranking all college football rivalries? I'm not putting the number one. I think that you could either put Michigan, Ohio State number one. I think Army Navy could be number one either because it's a standalone week. Nobody plays on that week for a reason. I think those are probably the only two that I would put at the number one spot. And then you could probably put a couple other in the top five. Initially, the ones that come to my head are like Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl, things like that. But not many are above Farmageddon in my mind. And I don't think that's a bias either. I think that there's a good history here. Yormark and the rest of the Big 12 are doing it a disservice by saying it's not going to be protected after 2027. That needs to change. They still have some time to fix that. But overall, that's where I would put it. Do you have any disagreements there?
Well, yeah, we can talk on a whole different show about the discontinuation of this. And I will say before I say this that I am basing this where I would rank Farmageddon on what the criteria were for this exact list. I just talked a little bit ago about what, like, if you're ranking based on jersey colors, okay. For this exact list, how is it not top 10? Genuinely, how? It literally meets like top 5 in every category besides maybe 2. I don't know. Like, I guess it doesn't have some of the best moments of all time. It doesn't have a kick 6 moment or whatever, but I feel like the Snowmageddon game and Abu Sama's kind of burst onto the scene in just the last few years is worth noting. Like, I do not comprehend how by this set of criteria, it's outside at least the top 15.
Rocco, Avery, put this rivalry back on the map in Dublin, make it happen, make this guy eat his words. It's because it's absolutely egregious. Can't believe it. Coming up next, let's talk about how the Big 12 and what certain other media companies, and CBS Sports is it in this case, has the Big 12, all the teams ranked and where they sit as the toughest schedules. Where Kansas State, where Iowa State sits, and then who's at the top and bottom. Who has the most easiest, who has the toughest heading into the new year, and how that could impact not only the game in Dublin, but who goes to Arlington at the end of the season. All here next on a Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones. But first, Nick, we got to talk about today's sponsor, and that's Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on your top of your routine, whether it's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused throughout back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. I'm excited to really get into Dublin and get into all this stuff with Farmageddon. Obviously, putting out all these episodes, getting stuff, I got to make sure that I'm ready to go and stay hydrated. Well, Drip Drop's been helping me out with there. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. I'm trying Drip Drop right now, and I got the variety pack. Really into the watermelon, really like the orange, berry, lemon. They're all good flavors, but the orange ones, off limits to my wife. I said, you can have some of the other ones, can't touch the orange. That's my absolute favorite. So check it out now. Right now, Drip Drop's offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code Locked On College. That's dripdrop.com, promo code Locked On College for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard, which I think that is probably already passed. The heat has been insane, but it's never too late for Drip Drop. Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Cyclones, Farmageddon Friday, a Locked On College crossover. These are some of the most fun episodes. I look forward to having these episodes towards the end of the week, and we're getting closer and closer to Dublin, August 23rd. It's going to be absolutely insane. What's going to be really weird is, one, we get college football soon. It's going to be really weird when we get into the season and we don't have Farmageddon Fridays after August 23rd, right? Like, that's going to be weird because we're going to be focused on other opponents. But maybe we'll have a Farmageddon Friday earlier than expected because we'll be playing again, potentially back-to-back for the first time. for a Big 12 opponent since 2004 Colorado Buffaloes, and for us the first time since the 2022 game against TCU. It all depends on how tough the rest of your schedule goes. Week 0 will not decide the fate for you or I when it's all said and done. And we look at some of these strength of schedules, and CBS Sports came out with an article and ranks the strength of schedules for the Big 12 heading into the new year. And Kansas State comes in at 4th, the 4th toughest schedule in the Big 12. And Iowa State comes in a little lower than that at 8th. So put it all together, it sounds like if Iowa State can get past Kansas State in Dublin, they have an easier path to get to Arlington, at least in the eyes of CBS Sports here. Let's talk about what Iowa State says here on this article. It says Iowa State was 1 win away from a bye in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff, 1 week from a bye into the quarterfinals. Instead, that distinction went to Arizona State as the 2024 Big 12 champions. The Cyclones will kick off their season in Dublin, as mentioned before. Of course, they'll take on their in-state rival Iowa as well in that matchup set for week 2. Their only P4 non-conference opponent in 2025 this is terrible writing. Their most intriguing matchup is November 8th conference championship rematch against the Sun Devils. So lots of typos in that. I apologize. Probably should have proofreaded that before it came on this show here, Nick. But let's just talk about your schedule. And you got the 8th toughest schedule right in the middle of the Big 12. When you can find yourself to stop laughing, what do you think about that being your strength of schedule there? My God.
I really was way funnier than I thought it was going to be. I apologize. No, I do like Iowa State's schedule this season quite a bit. One of the things that I am very excited about is the even distribution of the buys throughout the season. Iowa State will play 4 games, then have a bye, 3 games have a bye, 3 games have a bye, and then round out their final 2. I think that's relatively even, and I like that quite a bit. I believe it was Rocco at the Big 12 Media Days that talked about how the first 4 games for Iowa State this season will be the toughest that Iowa State has started the season with ever. I thought that was a little bit of a bold claim, just considering, I mean, you are playing Kansas State and Iowa, but you've got 2 non-conference games in there. Not that we should blow past South Dakota or Arkansas State, but maybe either way, I do like the schedule for Iowa State. I do. I believe what an 8 is not. I don't think that's wrong per se. Maybe it's giving a little bit of credit to Iowa State and how good they're going to be, because they will face a BYU or granted a Retzloff less BYU, but they'll also face an Arizona State in there. It's not like they're going to have a cakewalk to the Big 12 championship. But I actually disagree with you a little bit. You kind of threw in there that Kansas State, like, this game is not going to dictate the season for Iowa State. I think this game is going to be significantly bigger than people think it is, because this sets the tone for the entire year. You go over to London, you win that game, that whole flight back is a significantly different vibe than if you lose. That's already a conference loss to start your year. Now, not that Iowa State can't bounce back, but I think this game holds a significant amount of weight on the season, and it's really going to be interesting to see how ready are these teams. Like week 0, this is a huge game to start off the entire year. Kansas State coming in significantly higher in the challenge, I guess, based by CBS here. I'm not even going to attempt to read this. At number 4, what do you make of that number 4 ranking? Kansas State, a team that's favored to do very well in this season in the Big 12. Is that going to be a problem, that high difficulty of the schedule there?
Well, I think where it comes into play here is why they see them tougher than Iowa State is, one, you have your non-conference game is another Big 12 opponent. Although it is Arizona that you and I both agree that it's going to be towards the bottom of the Big 12 when the season's all said and done. It's still a power 4 in your own conference opponent that you have to play. You got to play 10 Big 12 opponents this year. And then another one is Army, right? So you never know what to expect from Army this year. Army was great last year, but they lost a lot. So I'm not really sure what to expect from them. But regardless, whether they're good or not, that's a game that you leave when you're done with. You remember that you played Army. Like, you're hurting. You got the ice packs, like and then you go right into playing Arizona afterwards. So it's going to be a tough schedule for sure. Overall, when I look at these, you mentioned BYU. They have the most cupcake schedule in the eyes of CBS Sports here. They say they have the easiest schedule, 16th, even that's with Jake Retzloff at Tulane or not. Is that enough? Can BYU take advantage of this easy schedule in the eyes of CBS Sports and still find themselves towards the top of the Big 12? That's yet to be determined. If you want more BYU coverage, check out Locked On Big 12. But if there's more things, check out the Baylor Bears. The Baylor Bears is the toughest schedule according to CBS Sports because of their non-conference schedule. And I actually agree with this. Auburn, SMU in their non-conference. Baylor has a tough matchup, a tough schedule. Although they do get Arizona State, Kansas State, some of those other teams, TCU in Waco this year, they still have to play them. So Baylor has the hardest schedule. I actually agree with CBS here on that behalf. So Baylor on the very top of the scale as the toughest schedule in the Big 12, BYU towards the bottom, us kind of in the middle. Doesn't stop us any chances from getting to Arlington. And just to add that little caveat, I also do agree that this is a must-win game for either of us in week 0, but I'm not going to rule out the loser of this game in Dublin to not make it.
No, I agree with that entirely. I think that both of these teams are capable. I just didn't want it to seem like this is a game where, well, you lose, you're still okay, because it is a conference game. Obviously, it's going to play a role there. But I think the implication of like literally first game of the season, overseas, all of the hype going into it, like it's going to be it's kind of a big deal. And I'll throw this in there too. They mentioned it's like this is the easiest schedule. This is the hardest schedule. The Big 12 is, in my opinion, the most condensed league from top to bottom. Maybe this year will be slightly different, but I think that the worst teams are closer to the best teams in this conference than in any other. And so, like, we play Arizona. Is this a bye week? No, it's still Arizona. Like, you can't. And as much as we do want to, and we kind of have done this, like, it's still a Big 12 opponent. Like, they still bring the boom. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we have the easiest schedule. Yeah, we have the hardest schedule. And yes, Baylor actually kind of a ridiculous schedule. But, like, you're playing Big 12 teams every single week. You have to, and they talked about this at Big 12 Media Days, you have to bring your A game. There are no B games in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of parity from top to bottom, let's get into if parity is going to strike again in the Big 12. I just mentioned Kansas State's got to play 10 Big 12 teams, with Arizona being that non-conference. Hey, their in-state rival, Arizona State, was predicted to finish last year and won the entire thing, because that's just how crazy this conference is. And according to some latest projections, it sounds like it's going to be crazy one more time, and probably again and again, year after year, in the craziest conference in college football. Let's finish that up. Let's talk about that next on this Locked On College crossover, Farmageddon Friday. But first, Nick, we got to talk about today's sponsor, and that's Game Time. We've all been there, logged on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale. Only lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices actually drop as you get closer and closer to showtime, and you could save up to 60% with those killer last minute deals. Whether it's you looking to maybe a concert that you're looking at lately, I'm gonna probably date myself here a little bit. Some of these youngsters might know, but I'm out in the West Coast right now. Super excited for something that my parents and I were big fans of. Jackson Brown, he's coming to play in Washington. I'm going to get some tickets to go see that. I'm definitely using Game Time, the only place I use to get tickets. Anything you're looking at lately, or something that you're into? Maybe a little Britney Spears or J-Lo or something like that?
I'm a big fan of Coldplay. I'm going to try to make it out to one of their concerts here soon.
Okay, good. Just stay off the Kiss Cam. That sounds like a good idea. And take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Game Time app. Check it out. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's talk about this here. Parity seems to strike again when it comes to the Big 12. And are you surprised when we see these rankings, these projections heading into the new season? Are you surprised that it's as close as it's going to be? I'm talking about Kelly Ford. He came out with his K Ford rankings, his 2.0 version 2 of projected rankings. You can find them on social media. I'll link the link for the Twitter thing in our show notes below as well. But he brings out his projected Big 12 standings, which is the percent chance to win at least blank amount of conference games based on his rankings. Now, I don't know exactly what he uses to get into this, but here's the main things here. One, every single team has at least a 1% chance of being tied for second in the conference. Insane. Not surprising in the Big 12, but insane. You're talking about every single team, including 0 for 9 Oklahoma State last year. You're including Arizona, who we just kind of dogged pretty hard in the last segment. You're mentioning all those schools. Also, every single team has at least a 32% chance to win at least 4 conference games upcoming season. That means they'd go at least 4 and 5 in the conference. Most likely that means they'd be bowl eligible as well. No team has better than a 32% chance to win at least 7 conference games, though. So interesting there, because 7-2 is probably the number that is what's going to take at the very minimum to get you to Arlington. Potentially 8-1. 7-2 is probably the number that could get you there, maybe with a tiebreaker or 2. Before we dig into some of like the numbers there and like where some of our teams sit in these rankings, just based off the general views there, what's your thoughts on this, Nick?
I'm not shocked at all. I mean, this is the Big 12 for you. Just the way that this lays out, it's like, wait, what's the logo on the top right there? Is that the SEC? Oh no, that can't be. This is the Big 12. Like that's just the name of the game in Big 12 football. Yeah. And you point out obviously that 4 win percentage. What does that look like? Is there a chance that literally every team in the Big 12 is bowl eligible? Like, I don't know if that's mathematically how that works out. The thought just popped in my head when you said that, though, and I was like, I would not be shocked. I genuinely would not be shocked if we had a relatively, an extremely even distribution of wins and every team became bowl eligible if it's mathematically possible. I assume so, but I'm not entirely sure on that. No, I think that this.
I'm not sure if it's. I'm not sure if you can actually get every team in. Now, for the record, 11 made bowl eligibility last year, 11 of 16. Some of those teams had bad non-conference records, though. So I think you probably could get at least 13, maybe even 14. But I mean, I haven't done the math either. Maybe you can get all 16, but I'm gonna say shenanigans.
Someone let us know. Someone let us know.
Yeah, someone let us know. Do the math. Let us know. Can all 16 teams make it? That'd be fun if that's the case. But 11 made it last year, and that's still pretty good. Looking at the rankings, Kansas State is sitting towards the top. For the record, you also said it can't be an SEC graphic. You're right. It can't, because it asked the chances of someone winning their 9th conference game. SEC, did you hear that?
That's true.
9th conference game. Kansas State sitting at the top there, tied for first with Arizona State with a 5.8 in the average of conference wins. So they project a average of 5.8 wins. That's the top. So obviously the winner is going to win more than 5 conference games, or 6 even. That's going to happen. Iowa State sits in 9th here. Not a lot of love to Iowa State. 4.8, only a 3% chance to get 8 wins. And then the magic number, which we think is going to be 7 to get to Arlington, only a 12% chance for Iowa State. On the plus side here, although they sit 9th, 10th place, Colorado, there's a jump there from 12% down to 4%. So it looks like there's a little bit of a tier there to get to that number, the 7%. Kansas State, Arizona State, 32%, 30%, respectfully. Then you got Baylor at 26%. Then there's a little bit of a drop. Texas Tech, 22, BYU, 18, tied for 6 there, TCU and Kansas at 17, Utah at 15, and that Iowa State at 12%. That seems pretty low for somebody who just went to Arlington. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, this is basically like every single day here at Locked On Cyclones. That's ridiculous. I don't really see how that equates at all. I'm going to be completely honest. If they're averaging out at about 4.8, let's say 5 wins, that means they go undefeated in the non-conference to get to their floor that I'm projecting of 8 wins. I think this is an 8-win team at the minimum. I don't see how. I think that they got better from last year. I really do mean that. Yeah, you're missing a couple huge players. No Darian Porter. No, obviously no Higgins or Knoll. Neither of the top wide receivers, arguably, in college football last year. At least the duo as a combo. But you got a lot better at linebacker because people are coming back from injury, or players, I suppose. Players are coming back from injury. You got better at tight end, in my opinion. I think you get better at quarterback as well, which I'll talk about a little bit, obviously at a different time, just because, we don't get too far into it. But I don't see that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just going to call it how it is. I don't think that's right. I'm sure there's some
you
fancy
think Iowa State isn't. Yeah. If you think Iowa State's an 8-win team, and assuming they win out in non-conference, that means they'd have to get at least 5 wins in non-conference, and that's seen as a 59% chance according to the K4 ratings here. I do think they're a better team as well. I do think that's the case. And even if they went 2-1 in non-conference, which I don't think is going to happen, but even if that did happen, that means they'd have to get 6. That's a 32% chance. This is all, again, this is just numbers here. This is all projections. This is all data points. This is not real football. We completely understand, but we are in the speculative season, and we're not talking hypotheticals because that's not our conference, but we're talking about things to speculate and to get ready for Dublin on August 23rd. There's so much to talk about. See Baylor at 3rd there. That's interesting. They got Baylor at 3rd. A little hype there, and not only the only hype we saw this week. You saw something on social media about Baylor as well, right?
Yeah, some guys over on 3 thought Baylor would be the only team to make it into the college football playoff from the Big 12. Yeah, I don't know where this Baylor hype is coming from. It's kind of coming out of nowhere. We see this, with the NFL draft, where all of a sudden some quarterback is like 6 to 8 days before maybe the greatest quarterback prospect of all time that was previously like a 6th rounder. Kind of feels that way with Baylor, where it's like we were kind of talking about Baylor, but not like this level. Now all of a sudden there's like a lot of chatter where Baylor could be really good. And we just talked about how hard their schedule is going to be. I don't know. I personally wouldn't put them in the Big 12 championship game, but they could. It's still the Big 12.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I said this the other day. I'll share it with you as well. I was on Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, and he put out his power rankings, and I'll show his power rankings right here. Not our preseason poll, but his power rankings. I told him this. I said 1 through 7, Texas Tech, Arizona State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor, Utah, and TCU. That's his top 7 in the conference rankings. I said I wouldn't be surprised if any of those 7 teams were in Arlington when it's all said and done.
Agreed. 100%. I think a lot of people are sleeping on TCU too. I'll just throw that in there. I don't know why I am so excited about TCU this season, but there's always one team, and it feels like they're being overlooked. Obviously, I'm rooting for Iowa State, but like we got to look out. They're on our schedule. We have to look out for that game, I think.
Same. Steven Simcox definitely shed the light a little bit for me on Locked On Kansas State a few days ago on my channel. We talked about that game coming up because I had no idea how to really understand what TCU was bringing to the table. Is Sonny Dykes on the hot seat? Is Josh Hoover more than just a one-year kind of wonder, 4,000-yard passer last year? There's a lot of things that he could really put into light. So if you haven't listened to that, you can check that out. And I think, Nick, you probably got to get Simcox on your show to make that happen. Let's get out of here. We got more to talk about coming up in the next couple weeks because we still have a few more weeks until Dublin, August 23rd, week 0, the kickoff of the college football season. And Nick and I will be back here every single Friday until then, including the Friday right before. That's going to be a crazy episode. I'm so looking forward to that one. All right, folks, please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been a Locked On College Crossover.
Do you think you're a better quarterback than Josh Hoover?
Of course. Yes. I mean, not better name, though. That's a vacuum.